All right, everybody, we are live and we are talking about autism today. So if you are just barely coming in, it takes a minute to get some people in here, but not too long. We're going to be able to get started here very soon. Let's see, here we go. All right, guys. Yep, we are live. We're talking autism. If you have questions about autism, you're in the right place. If you just like listening and learning about autism, you're in the right place. If you have autism, you're in the right place. If you have a child with autism, you are in the right place. Give us just a moment. It takes just a minute to be able to get a little more people in here. But we have a lot that we're going to be talking about today. A lot that we can be talking about today. Hey, Christy, good to see ya. I'm going to start with a little bit of breaking news, everybody. There is some breaking autism news. Good morning, Ra. I kind of like to start these streams, and I'll probably touch on this again. But there is a little bit of breaking news today that I want to share with everybody. A new study was released yesterday. A new study was released yesterday that we should all be aware of. This is published in, what journal was this? All right, this was the Journal of Maternal Fetal Medicine. Hold on. Let me find out what study it is. Okay, the Journal of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine. That's right. So what they did, this is a study, just barely came out, okay? Just barely came out yesterday. They found no link between the COVID-19 vaccination, the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, in pregnancy and autism in young children. This is big, you guys. About every single day, I have had people ask about this and share questions that they have about if that is something that they should be worried about. And I haven't been able to quote it with a study, but this study was just announced. They studied hundreds of toddlers and tracked autism and found that there was no link between the mother getting the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy and the child having autism. And you know what? If it was found that there was a correlation, you better believe I'd be talking about it. Okay. I am not going to hide or defend anything. We are just going to go by what the science is saying. So, this is a very good thing, to be aware of. It's one more thing a lot of people had questions about, and it's very promising. So Emily says, good morning. Thank you for having a platform for us to come and ask questions. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is my favorite part of my day. I wasn't supposed to go live for another 10 minutes, but I said, I can't wait any longer. I gotta hop on. So I jumped in. Bobby's World says, problem is we need to look at neuroinflammation and autoimmune. There's definitely a correlation between infection and inflammation, as environmental factors in pairing with genetic factors. Oh, Dr. Tracy, did you see that one? I loved seeing that one. Dr. Tracy, do you want to come up? You don't have to, but if you want to, I just sent you an invite. You don't have to, but if you want to come up, you can. We've never had a conversation before, so we've talked a lot behind the scenes. Hello, Dr. Tracy. Should I call you Dr. Tracy? What's your last name?
It's Tyson, but you can call me whatever you want. Tracy is just fine.
Okay, Dr. Tracy. I'll call you whatever you'd like. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm good. What's your work schedule like? I feel like I never know if you're ever gonna see my lives because you're probably doing pediatrician stuff.
Yes, Mondays are my administrative day. And so it's where I kind of do meetings and get work done. But I actually snuck away this morning and got to go skiing for a few hours. So I'm back home now.
No way. Oh my gosh. Where do you live?
Vermont.
Okay, Vermont. All right, everybody. Dr. Tracy, if you if you guys have never seen Dr. Tracy, you guys should follow her. She is awesome. She goes live sometimes and she does Q&As for parents. And I hear her talk a lot about autism. A lot of questions that people have for pediatricians is about autism. And so she's really great. Hit her a follow. I don't know, Dr. Tracy, are you open to answering some questions or having a conversation for a minute, or do you have some time?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Ask away.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Okay. Something, let's see. I'm trying to think of where to even start. Something I hear a lot of people ask about is, when they feel like a pediatrician. So for everyone who doesn't know, Dr. Tracy, maybe before I even ask this, could you give a little bit of a rundown about yourself?
Sure. I'm a general pediatrician for about 20 years now. And one of the things that I kind of call my specialty is developmental delay in autism. And that really has to do with the fact that my oldest daughter has developmental delay and has autism tendencies. And so it, obviously like a lot of us, our families, we kind of bring that into our professional life as well. And so that's a little bit about me in general. So I do quite a bit of time, educating families on development, behavior. And then I've lived in that world where I had to navigate special education and, ABA therapy and all of the things. And so I get it not only professionally, but as a human being and a parent as well. And I think that's why I enjoy talking about it.
Yeah, you're so good. I mean, that perspective is huge. People, I think a lot of questions you get asked is about vaccinations. And
yes.
I even see in the comment right now, are pediatricians deeply trained on vaccines or just trained to follow the schedule? And every single day, every day I go live, there are a dozen questions or more about concern about vaccinations. What is kind of your viewpoint on vaccinations and how do you approach that with families?
Sure. So I think the first part to what you asked is, are we trained in vaccinations? And the answer is yes, extremely heavily. What I think people don't recognize is that every single aspect of our medical education is then around vaccinations. When we have biochemistry classes and pathophysiology classes and histology classes, all of our classes then have aspects of understanding how vaccinations work. And certainly since I've graduated, I've started practicing before the Hib and Prevnar vaccinations, before the rotavirus vaccination, before HPV and hepatitis A. Before hepatitis B became universal. So I've seen a lot of these vaccinations come out. And I do think that once you fully understand vaccinations and you've also been a part of, FDA approval and scientific process, you do put more trust in that process. And I think people kind of misunderstand that as not being educated on vaccinations when really it's, I'm not a physiologist. I'm not a immunologist. And so I do trust PhDs and doctors with more experience than myself to do that scientific process. And then we read the articles, we actually kind of follow that. So we are practitioners of medicine. So when you talk to your pediatrician, I do think it's helpful to understand that we practice medicine. It would be like, a mechanical engineer who has to trust the chemical process of the steel that they're using. It doesn't mean that they don't understand the process, but they're not the one creating the new products. And I think that helps a little bit, at least for me, to kind of explain that to families. I myself is someone, because I did emergency medicine first, so I had to go back into primary care and I had to relearn vaccination. So I've actually probably spent hundreds of hours reading about vaccinations and re-educating myself. And because of that, I've spoken local level, national level about vaccinations. So I probably have more understanding than maybe most general pediatricians, which is why I do what I do. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. It means that they understand the idea and they believe in the science behind it. So that's a long-winded explanation, but that's kind of, I think it's important to understand that just because your pediatrician may not be able to tell you the exact milliequivalents of aluminum in the vaccination does not mean they don't have the experience to help navigate it. And I saw an interesting statistic the other day that said that 95% of pediatricians worldwide vaccinate their own families. And I think that is telling. I mean, what other field can you find where 95% of people would say, yep, I'm going to strap my kid in that exact same thing that I'm asking you to do? And I think that's really telling.
Oh, I love it. And I've touched on vaccines before on here, mostly just to like make sure people know that there's like people think that, oh, like, yeah, there's a correlation. Really all that there is between autism and vaccinations are anecdotes. There's not even a correlation. And so
Yes.
like it is purely anecdotal experience of people. And, I feel for families though, like I really do, because, our brains are designed to find answers. And, it's seeing regression. I don't know how it was with your daughter, but my son, we didn't see regression. My daughter, though, she's 19 months. And it has been kind of devastating to see that, someone who was communicating and responding to her name, and then suddenly at around 14 months, we've seen a huge regression, and we're having her
Yeah.
tested for autism now. And so I think it's not like I really understand where parents come from when they say like, oh man, this is what we like lived. Like she was normal, and then they got vaccinated, and now we see this regression. And so I have a lot of compassion and empathy for people who experience that. But is it accurate to say that like that is purely anecdotal, and there is when you look at the millions of people that have been studied, there has been zero correlation between autism and vaccinations?
Yeah, agree. And I have to start off by saying exactly what you just did. There's no part of anything I do that is dismissive of that. Same as you, my daughter, I knew from prenatally that there was a problem. And so there wasn't a regression. However, what you do notice, and this is what the science shows, is that early language skills is very different than language skills after 18 months. And so, a lot of children's development is looking like it's on track when it's really about just regurgitating information. But once a child has to actually look at the world around them and see other people as being a part of the story, they really have to have different skills. And there's even some studies that show that language under a year comes from a different part of the brain than language after a year. And so that has a lot to do with why parents in certain genetic forms of autism don't notice it until they start seeing regression, because it's not so much regression as it is they stop developing in the new form.
Yeah.
So I certainly understand how people feel, and I am pretty grateful every day that I do have this background, because I can't imagine not having that understanding and what that must feel like, and to feel dismissed. And, I always remind people, back in the 1990s, when the first study came out linking the MMR vaccination to autism, which has now been retracted, science really did believe it. And there was millions of dollars put into whether or not this was the case. And there were 4 really good studies that were done with no bias. This wasn't to disprove it. There was actually holds on vaccinations for a little while. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but there were lots of places that would not give vaccinations until they understood this. And there were some studies that showed no correlation. They looked at twins. They looked at siblings who had autism. They looked at, so many different factors. And the 4 main studies couldn't find any correlation whatsoever. And then that paper was retracted. And so I always like to try to remind people that it may sound dismissive now because we're trying to fight misinformation, but it really wasn't dismissive when it first started. It really was, oh, wow, we need to look into this. So I think that's something I always like to try to, help people understand. And sometimes it falls on deaf ears, and I get that too.
Yeah, I'm really curious, like why is it that so many people, and I see it in the comments, and guys, just a reminder, this is a positive vibes only. You're allowed to disagree here. You can share your opinion, but the moment it crosses the line of being rude and dismissive and judgmental, that's where we start muting. And so please be positive here and share your opinion, but Why is it, Dr. Tracy? Why do you think that there's so many people that think that doctors are salesmen for vaccinations? Like, is that a real thing? Like, I hear that all the time. Like, why do people think that?
It got started because, first of all, you have to vilify the people who are saying the thing that, when doctors, pediatricians specifically came out and said vaccines do not cause autism. And when that happened, you had to vilify those people in order to continue the agenda. And again, this is not on parents whose children have been harmed by vaccination. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about politicians, anti-vax corporations, lawyers, people who know this information isn't true and continue to push a false narrative. You had to vilify the people who were standing up and saying, no, this isn't true, because otherwise, you really couldn't stand against what we were saying. And there actually is anything in misinformation, there's a grain of truth. Yeah. So initially, doctors were paid when your child was sick. They really weren't paid when your child was well. And so in order to convince doctors' offices to change to a more wellness program, there had to be incentives. And so the federal government actually started a program in the early 1990s where they said, hey, if you'll offer wellness exams, if you will do screenings to try to prevent diseases from occurring, we will ask insurance companies, and we will do it through Medicaid, where you can have higher level of reimbursement if you offer these services. Because there was really no incentive for doctors back then. They couldn't afford it. And the same thing happened with vaccinations. They were so expensive that a lot of doctors' offices said, hey, you should provide those in the public health arena. We can't afford it. And that really wasn't working well. It was disjointed care. And so the HEDIS model came out, which was done by the federal government, to say, hey, we'll reimburse you at a higher rate if you will offer these things which we know keep people healthy. And so that's where it came from. So there is a grain of truth that doctors are incentivized, but it's not pharmaceutical companies. That's illegal. It's actually insurance companies and the federal government who says, if you will do these things, which we know keep people healthier, which in turn saves money, right? Healthier people does save money, then we will compensate you at a higher level so that you can afford to do it. And even with that, vaccinations are a wash in most offices. And in some offices are still negative. So like my office, I have a high percentage of patients with Medicaid, and Medicaid does reimburse us decently for vaccination. So it's kind of a wash. But I'm in Vermont, where no money changes hands for vaccinations because the state decided to have universal vaccinations where the state pays for them. And it's nice because I can legitimately say I do not take any money for vaccinations. And so again, there's always a grain of truth that then leads to more distrust. And that's why I'm so open and honest about how I'm paid and how things work, because I think it helps to understand what's going on behind the curtain, because money does change hands. I mean, that is the reality of a situation in every job you have, but it was actually the opposite, where doctors made more money when people were sick than they do now. Like if you look at for inflation, pediatricians make less now than they did 30 years ago. And that's fine with me. Like you can pay me less if that means that children are going to be well and that I don't have to fight this battle. You can pay me a lot less, which is why a lot of doctors are now like, hey, let's go ahead and get to universal health care, so that doctors aren't paid anything but a salary to be available for the children in their community. I think there was like 75% of pediatricians in the country were like, let's go, because it's getting exhausting, and we don't want to go back to treating children for preventable diseases. Yeah. It's devastating.
Yeah, Utah, I mean, measles has I got a notice last week that my son was exposed to measles at school. Like I never thought that I'd get a notification like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So this is I've never seen my chat like this. This is crazy. Like, is this what it's like for you all the time, that people just think that you are some?
Yes.
I don't know. This is. So
I know. I'm
to
so
me.
Sorry. You're probably thinking, oh, I wish I wouldn't have brought her on.
Absolutely not. I mean, I'm just blown away on like I touch on it, but I think I just just touch on it. And this is the most we've talked about vaccines. And I mean, I've muted a few people. This is shocking to me a little bit of how much pushback there is.
It is.
But yeah, let me ask you a couple of other things if you still have time. And if you got to go, I mean, I always understand.
No, I'm good.
You're welcome to be here. For everyone just barely coming in, maybe I'll introduce myself and I'll introduce Dr. Tracy a little bit and what we're doing. So my name is Kylan. I am a father of a 3.5-year-old with autism. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I live in Utah, and we do. I have worked with people with autism since 2013, and I am the CEO of a company in Utah that provides autism services throughout the state. And my favorite part of my day is coming live, and I get a lot out of these conversations. This is not meant to be a place where we fight, where we argue. I do bring professionals up here from time to time. And one of the big things that we teach is, as a parent, we don't need to know everything. What we do need to know is how to find good people who are experts, who know what they're talking about, and building our care team. Dr. Tracy is one of these people. I've been watching her. She goes live sometimes. Be sure you follow her. She's right here. She's on live with me. She's a pediatrician. She has life experience with all of this. And she's absolutely incredible. So if you have questions about autism, especially as it relates to pediatricians, if you're wondering if your child has autism, if you're wondering how to find a good pediatrician, anything like this, this is going to be a good time to come and hang out with us today. So blah, blah, blah says we don't need to know everything. That's absolutely right. Like, there is no way that you are going to be an expert like a speech language pathologist. You're not going to be an expert like a board certified behavior analyst. You're not going to be an expert like a pediatrician. And we can try to get informed, but there is real power in being humble and accepting that we don't need to know everything. We simply need to surround ourselves with information and with support of good people who are going to help us. So, Dr. Tracy, if there's any questions you see in the chat that you want to address, feel free to jump in. Has there been anything that you've seen that you're like, I'm dying to talk on this?
I do. There's a few people that have asked about leucovorin and autism. And I'm not going to pretend to be a cerebral folate deficiency expert. I think there are probably about 5 of those in the world. But what I do understand is that they're in the looking for genetic causes of autism. There were a certain percentage of children that by spinal tap, they were actually shown to be deficient in certain folic acid in their spinal fluid. And they were still trying to determine how big of a player that was with autism. Well, in the midst of that, there were some studies that looked at replacing those specific children with a different form of folic acid because they couldn't kind of process the typical one. And would that help? And that's called leucovorin. And they found in one study that there could be some benefit, but it was only in children who had the diagnosed cerebral folate deficiency. And so they're still in the early phases of how do you test people for this? When do you test them? When do you treat them? How does it work? Is it safe? How long do you do it? Like, they're really early on. And sadly, this got grabbed a hold of in a lot of different communities, but specifically with the federal government, where Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. came out and said, hey, this is a treatment for autism. And it made all of us just kind of groan, like, oh no, don't say that, because the absolute panic in parents going, how can I get a hold of leucovorin? This is going to help my kid. And we just don't know that yet. And I think it's hugely promising, hugely promising. I am really excited that we are actually looking at what exactly is causing certain forms of autism and what could we do even prenatally. You know, if you know there's a genetic tendency in your family, it's so exciting. But to put that kind of piece out there is without your due diligence and waiting to truly understand it just broke my heart. And
They jumped the
sadly,
gun a
the
little bit. They
study,
jumped the gun.
they did
Um,
huge,
and I'm
but
I'm
they
wondering
also
though, like,
retracted the
oh
paper. They
yes, go ahead,
retracted
talk on
it.
that. That's
Yes.
wild.
So the paper that they were touting, they just retracted it. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to keep doing it. They are. But the one paper, which only had like 40 something kids in it anyway, they retracted it because it wasn't a good study. So I think this is
Which it
why
was the largest
sometimes,
study, right? It was the largest with the
yes,
most
yes,
like uh,
yes.
promising data, and they found that they added up the numbers wrong in the data
Hmm.
and weren't able to make sense or replicate the errors that they had made. And so, I mean, the study's been retracted.
Yes, yes. And Sophia's follow-up question was, would it do any harm to treat them without testing? Like, would it harm? And we don't know. It's such a good question, and I wish that we had the answer. And when I say we, like, this is what I am following the actual experts. But I, we don't know yet. There is the potential that it won't cause harm, but we don't have that knowledge to say for sure.
I
And I
have
think it's still
heard that one of
emerging.
the side effects of leucovorin that people have experienced and is documented in the literature is kind of an increase in anxiety, especially if there's like
Mhm,
too high of a dose, increase in anxiety and some problem behaviors. But that
mhm,
it doesn't seem to be sustained long term after stopping the dosing. But I guess the same
yeah,
mechanism of kind of activating the brain that
mhm,
could potentially open it up to more learning if used incorrectly or on the wrong dose could increase problem behavior or anxiety. I don't know if you've read
yeah.
into that at all, but that's what I've heard.
No, I haven't. And I think that's the important point is that, I get it wanting, like, can we do something now? It's heartbreaking. And, parents with children with spinal muscular atrophy, that's another group that there's all this emerging treatments and having to wait and watch your child suffer and not be able to get access to these treatments when there's the potential that they could be helpful. Like, I get that.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to do harm. And I don't think we have that knowledge yet. And again, there are specialists who, might be more comfortable with this, but the overall consensus is that let's leave this in the research for now and be very careful with what you prescribe.
Yeah, yeah. But thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I get asked about leucovorin just about every day because people are excited about it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I hope that one of the like I think it's dangerous to put it out there and make everyone feel like they're missing out if they're not taking it. But one of the positive sides of it is I think that there's going to be an abundance of research done during this next year, just based on the interest in leucovorin. That I think yeah, I really do think it's gonna move the research quicker,
Yes.
and I think that is a positive side of it. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I'm not pushing for my own son to be on it yet, but I'm optimistic that maybe we can understand the side effects better. Maybe we can understand dosing scheduling better and how to identify when someone truly is going to benefit from it. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for sure.
Yeah.
Any other comments that you've been seeing that you feel like you are excited to talk about or answer?
Yeah, there's a few things. I wish I did have some information. There's some people asking about like vagus nerve and synapses, and I don't have that level of expertise. I'm more on the side of, vaccination information and screening and treatment, and then as a parent. And so I'm not on the research side, and so I don't have as much information on that, although I wish that I could help. I wish I was a child neurologist or neurophysiologist so I could help you with that. But there is, someone just asked, is there a link between childbirth and probability of autism? And actually, you did a really great video about the risk factors for autism recently as well. And we talked about like, infection during pregnancy and, certain exposures like valproic acid. There was one study that showed that the length of time in between pregnancies could possibly have something to do with it. So there's definitely more and more coming out about what could possibly also be triggers when there's a genetic component. So It's interesting, and I hope that if we could, I never think we should stop studying vaccinations, but if we could stop blaming them on autism, I feel like that time and effort and money could be put into some of these other things that have shown promise that we can't get anyone to grab a hold of and really, really sink their teeth into and fund.
Oh, it's a
Um,
distraction. That's a really good way
yes.
to look at it. That it
Mhm.
really is a distraction at this point, and there's very few things as far as um, linking autism and vaccinations. Very few things in the autism world has been like I don't know anything that's been researched more.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I don't know much about vaccinations apart from the link between autism. I have no expertise
Mhm.
here, but I agree with you. I prefer that the resources be put into researching better things. I think also a big part of this is that when you start saying that vaccines cause autism or Tylenol during pregnancy causes autism, I hear so many of these things that it's passing blame onto the mother. And
Yes.
I talk to parents every day who, especially the mothers, they hold a lot of guilt, a lot of blame, and they feel like they did something wrong to cause their child to have delays or to have autism. And
Mhm.
like the obviously like with genetics, I guess that's part of who we are, but it's not something a mother
Mhm.
did. And there's very few
No.
things that have been researched and even correlated with autism that has anything to do with a mother or a father to blame for how their child is. So that's where
Yeah.
I stand.
Agrees. I think there's enough blame on mothers in this country for so many and worldwide for so many different things. And, having been that mom as well, it took me 7 years for my daughter's genetic diagnosis to be found. She was the first one in the United States. And, that took so much time and effort and advocacy and just pushing on my part as a parent. But, that whole 7 years, I believed that it was, pesticides, that I was fertilizing our grass. And I did not know I was pregnant yet. And I was exposed to it. And then I believed I had given her an infection during pregnancy. And then I believed that, there's so many different things that I blamed myself for. And so I get that from a parent perspective as well. And I get what it feels like. And it's a horrible feeling. And it's also a horrible feeling to feel like you are the expert on your child when you take them to a doctor or a therapist or somebody else. Like you do want to sometimes let that go and say, can you please just be the expert? And I think parents of children with autism have not gotten to feel that very often. And
Hmm.
that's a very lonely feeling too. And I think that leads to us stepping up and those of us in professional spaces and allowing parents to feel like they can just parent and not have to feel as if they have to be the expert in every situation. And I know that seems like you mentioned it earlier, and someone kind of challenged it like, wait, we don't need to be the experts, but you just need to be the expert on your kid and get the right people around you. But we need to do a better job. And my field needs to do a better job at helping parents feel like they can let the reins of that go a little bit. And with social media, we've kind of gone the opposite direction.
Oh, oh man, I love the way you talk about all of this. That's amazing. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because a question I get quite often, and I think you will probably have some unique insight on is um, kind of this like nutrition and gut health stuff. From my understanding, one of the main reasons kids go to the pediatrician is because of like constipation and like digestive issues.
Mm-hmm.
And questions I get all the time is my kid has autism. Like, do I need to be doing this gluten-free stuff? Like, my
Mm-hmm.
kid is only eating chicken nuggets. How worried should I be? And the guidance that I always give is like, your kid just needs a full tummy. And kids with autism, that if they have
Mm-hmm.
ARFID or very rigid eating, like, don't please give them their safe foods. And
Yes.
like, you can little by little work on nutrition, but like, if you try to force these really strict diets, it could
Mm-hmm.
do more harm than good. But I don't know. What perspective do you have on
Yeah.
helping kids have good nutrition? How concerned should parents be about pushing good nutrition? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think that, scientifically, there was some promising studies that then got grabbed a hold of and, used incorrectly, that said that, gluten and things like that were triggering for kids with autism. And so it caused a really big push around 15, 20 years ago for these diets. And a lot of actually negative consequences happened. It was financially devastating for families, because there's a lot of families that didn't have the resource to be, buying all these different kinds of foods. The children became nutritionally deficient. Their behaviors were worse. Their weights were lower. Like, it really was detrimental. And so, we have moved more into the evidence does not show that there is a significant gut related issue with autism. And I know some people disagree with that, and I'm open to more studies that are coming out to say something different. But where we are right now is that for the majority of people with autism, it's not going to make a difference, and there can actually be some harm. And so, exactly what you said, I try to focus with family on whole foods. What are they willing to eat? Trying to get some extra vitamins in, trying not to make that be the one part of their day that's also miserable, because it's so challenging. And yes, we say the same thing as we do with babies, like fed is best. Let's get some food in them, especially if there's ARPid. I'm so glad we have a name for that now, because families with children with autism have been screaming it from the rooftops for decades that this was a real thing. This is not picky eating. This is different. It has to be treated different. And it's a really challenging problem. So the studies are not there. I've never seen anything. Most specialists do not see anything. And I try not to put that back on families. If they want to support a different kind of diet with their child, I will help support them through it. Yeah. I'm never opposed to trying something, but the evidence isn't there where I'm going to recommend it.
Yeah. But I guess there is this idea, though, of like, especially if your kid can't talk. Like, I've had, I mean, my 10-year-old, like, he was so backed up. We ended up having to do an enema one time when he was younger. And like, the constipation and gut problems, digestive problems impact all kids. It's not autism unique, right? And but if a kid can't communicate, that's where I feel like there could be a lot of problems, right? Like, we don't know why they're upset, why they're engaging in problem behavior, why they're acting different today. But we definitely should look at, like, one of the common reasons they go to the doctor all the time, kids, is because they could be constipated or tummy aches or things like that. Is that like, do you see a lot of, is that in your practice? Do you feel like you get a ton of visits from kids, not autism, but just kids in general that constipation, digestive issues?
Yeah, I think constipation is in the top 4 pediatric complaint visits nationwide. And it's a really big issue. And a lot of it has to do with, our kids' diets and just our understanding of, we also have switched away from fiber a lot in our diets, as well as like fermented foods. And those things definitely help support, normal bowel function. And so, and that's, been my concern with, a very restrictive diet, is that you're really not getting everything that you need. So we have to stay really preemptive as pediatricians when we have a child with a limited food palate, getting that fiber in how we can, getting liquids in how we can, supporting them. And I tell parents, if your child has autism, especially, and it's nonverbal, I don't care what their normal bowel function should be. They should have a bowel movement every day, because it's the only way I can know that they're not getting backed up and that's not causing them pain. Because it's so hard to watch when they can't tell you what's causing pain, whether that's an ear infection, a toothache, a stomach ache, nausea. So if we can keep them having a bowel movement every single day, we can at least rule that out as a problem. And that's a huge thing to try to do with kids.
Love it. Another question. I've had some people tell me that their pediatricians have dismissed their child's developmental delays and almost told them to like wait it out. I'm curious your thoughts on things. One, like, how do you make sure you have a good pediatrician? What should you be looking for? But also, like, what would you say to parents? And I don't know how many people are in here who are thinking their kid might have autism, but what do you say to families who let's say their MCHAT scores indicated high level of likelihood of autism? And when should you wait it out, and when should you go and pursue a diagnosis?
Yes. No, I think that, first of all, as a pediatrician, like our job is to do the screening and let parents know if we notice there's an issue. But then also, if we don't find it on screening, listen to what parents are saying, because a screening tool is only as good as the person who is telling you the information. And so if I have a parent that is really concerned, maybe they have another child with autism, or they themselves struggle with it, or they're just very anxious about it, then we definitely take a step deeper. And we screen in 3 phases now. So we screen at 18 months, 24 months, and 30 months. And that's going to catch most kiddos that have, kind of that more severe level 1, level 2 autism. Level 3 is, you're going to find that a little bit later in some cases, and that's okay. But I find 2 things. Just because a test does not show a concern does not mean that a parent's concerns are not valid. And I learned that very on in practice, is that you have to listen to parents. What I get more than that, though, is I get more of a parent not wanting to address the developmental delay.
Really?
Like, no, my friend's child didn't talk till they were 3. We want to wait. And I have to respect that too, because I don't want to over medicalize pediatric development. There's a whole movement on the opposite end of the spectrum, with families saying that we medicalize everything and that they don't need wellness visits because we're just trying to medicalize their kids. So if you have a kid with a medical condition, you're like, listen to me, like, I need your help and I want this done early. But then we have this whole other pendulum, which is, you're just trying to medicalize my kid. You're just trying to send them to specialists. So we do have to kind of weigh that balance. And we just need feedback from parents to say, I get what you're saying, but I'm still concerned. What do we do? And most of the time I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm going to listen to the parent. But if you don't have that from your pediatrician, you need to find a new one, because we are out there. It just may take a little bit of, working to find that person who listens to you and understands you as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Love that so much. All right. Let's see here. What should pediatricians be doing to screen? I mean, they do the MChat, right? Like at 18 months, is that right? And 2 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do. And most offices are doing something called Bright Futures, which is just typical development. And then the MChat is specific for autism. And then there's also something called the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which is done at different phases and but it's a little more detailed development. And that can also trigger kind of early intervention. But one thing for parents to remember too is, in most states, you can request an early intervention evaluation for your child, which under the age of 3, without a referral from your pediatrician. And that is really important to know. You just type in, like in the state of Vermont, if you just type in Vermont early intervention, there's a phone call. You can call and request an evaluation for your child. It's something we all pay our taxes for. It's something that, daycares can request it. Like, doesn't just have to be done by your pediatrician. And so if a parent does feel like they're not being heard, that is one way to get a little bit of extra support. And then you just keep following up. I've definitely seen a kid that I was not worried about at 18 months. And by 24 months, I was very worried. And then I've seen the opposite, where I was really worried at 18 months. And by 24 months, I was like, oh, okay, well, that was just that child's development. And that seems to have improved. So I think it's trying to find that best middle ground. But if you think there's something going on with your child, you are the expert on your child, and you need to keep pushing until you get more information.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It was hard for us to decide if we get our daughter tested, because we saw this regression. She stopped responding to her name. MChat does indicate that, but we're still, that there's a likelihood of autism. Pediatrician recommended it, but we're still seeing improvement. I mean, she is learning so many words. She's doing so good, but she won't respond to her name. We actually made a video. I might, if I get my wife's permission, I might post it, but it's the cutest video, because she actually responds to her brother's name instead of her own. And so, like, we're sitting across the table and we're saying, like all of our kids' names and her name, and she doesn't respond. And then there's one of our kids' names that we say, and she turns and looks and
Mm-hmm.
says, "Yeah," and it's her copying what she sees her brother do. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yes.
know. It's hard to decide whether you get
Yeah.
evaluated or not. But my perspective and what I recommend to people is that the earlier that you can detect autism, the better. The earlier that you're able to start
Mm-hmm.
these services, the better. And if you feel as though, like, if all the signs point towards autism, if you're doing these screeners and it indicates autism, move forward with it. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I mean, I've never talked to someone who regretted getting an evaluation done. I've never had that happen. Um,
No, same. I've never had a family that regretted it either. And I mean, the first time it was mentioned to me as a parent, I probably had the same reaction a lot of people do, as I was slightly offended. Like, that is not what's happening. And so I understand that feeling too. But I think it's so important to understand how your child's brain works and what are the best ways to support them, and just kind of getting that information is so important. And it's not about labels, it's not about anything but just getting the understanding of your kid, and can everybody be on the same page with how to offer them support. And there are, some places that overdiagnose, and I've seen that where
yeah,
there's kids diagnosed that don't really have autism, and sometimes the diagnosis falls away. I
yeah,
still haven't had a parent regret it, even in that case,
no,
because it's like, oh, great, okay, wonderful. That's not what's happening, but there still needed to be services at that age.
yep,
So, it doesn't matter. I have two twins right now. One has, obvious autism. The other one was diagnosed. It's already kind of fallen off on the other one. It was likely a twin phenomenon. And even those parents are like, no, we're so glad that he was diagnosed, because maybe those services he got early on helped. So I think it's never a bad thing.
yeah, I love that. Everybody, if you are just coming in, put some questions in the chat. We have Dr. Tracy on with us today. She's a pediatrician. She knows a lot about autism. She has personal experience. She also uh, talks to people who have concerns about autism every single day. If you have questions for a pediatrician, especially, feel free to put it in the chat. We're gonna be answering some questions as long as Dr. Tracy is up here. She's welcome to hop down, Dr. Tracy. You can hop down whenever you want. I'm not gonna force you up here, but I love having you here. You're truly an expert. For those that are new here, while you're typing in these questions, I am just going to introduce you a little bit. I go live every day. I try to go live at 12 p.m. Eastern time every day for about 2 hours. I am an autism father, so I have a 3.5-year-old diagnosed with autism. He's the cutest guy. I do post occasional videos of him. You can look at him singing the Skidamarink song in my profile. It is the cutest video that you will see in your entire life. And anyway, I'm a proud dad. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. I've worked with people with autism since 2013, and I am currently the CEO of a company that provides autism services in Utah. We serve a lot of kids, a lot of teens, a lot of adults here throughout the state. But really, this is just a safe space for parents to be, and we do like answering questions. And so, put your questions in the chat. Let's talk about autism. Where are you at with things? Are you worried about your kid? Are there concerns? We got a doctor up here who can help answer questions. So, all right. Are we seeing any good questions here, Dr. Tracy?
I saw one that I think is a really good point about children being diagnosed older and early adults. And I'd love your perspective too, as an ABA therapist. But from the diagnostic perspective, like, we are seeing that more, because the diagnostic criteria is changing and the screening is changing. When I was growing up, nobody was screened for autism. I mean, you had to be completely nonverbal and have severe, repetitive, harmful behaviors in order to even be considered for autism. So there are adults who, maybe had normal language skills as a child, so they were missed. And then when they get older, they start having anxiety They might have some social issues, and then they can definitely be diagnosed with autism. And I've had some teenagers that it has changed their life to understand that they have autism. It opens up a world, and they say, okay, I get it. Like, I get what's going on. And they can even start advocating for themselves, where they say, I might not understand what you're saying. I have autism. Can you explain that in a different way? And it allows them to connect with people and not feel like it's something they're doing wrong. It's a way that their brain works. And I think that is huge. And so I do have a fair amount of teenage and young adult children, and that I refer out for testing. And I do like a specific screener in my office. It's like the autism screening quotient that's better for older kids and adults. And I will absolutely refer them out. And I have found it to be extremely helpful. And I think that's one of the things to remember when people talk about like autism exploding. Autism is exploding because we are testing for it and we are screening for it. And we are, those criteria have been expanded for what that in titles. And so there are a lot of people that I grew up with that had autism. They just didn't get the benefit of understanding that's what it was and getting any help at all. Yes, I mean the old Asperger's, and even more on a spectrum than that. So I think it's the more of us want to know, the better, and I think it's super helpful. And I've seen it be life changing and decrease anxiety and depression significantly, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty passionate about this because I hate it when people say that there's an epidemic of
Yes.
autism. Like, first of all, that type of phrasing makes it sound like autism is a disease, something that can
Yes.
be cured, something that is like a toxin in the body to detox from. When
Hmm.
we know very clearly that is not what autism is. Autism is simply a difference in how the brain was developed in utero, or let's see, prenatal and perinatal. So during birth
Hmm.
or immediately after, while the brain is still in those early development. It's not something someone catches later in life. It is not something that, something in society is causing everybody to catch autism. And I think that language is harmful. And so
Hmm.
Dr. Tracy, I appreciate your input on that, because I think there's a lot that goes into this increase that we're seeing. I mean, we're now at the point of 1 in 31 kids are diagnosed with
Hmm.
autism. That's a lot. But I don't have
Hmm.
any evidence to support that that is higher than the actual rate that it was 50 years ago.
Hmm.
It's simply more people are diagnosed and labeled that way. I mean, it was what,
Agree.
2013 that they expanded
Hmm.
the definition of autism. Is that right?
Hmm. Yes.
Where it was what, autism, Asperger's. There was a third one that kind of got lumped in there.
Pervasive developmental disorder,
That's right. That's right.
which was really kind of a middle ground. Like, they didn't meet criteria for autism, but they were caught, and they looked different than, kids and adults with Asperger's. So it was kind of like a catch all term, and they kind of lumped them all together. They also, when they expanded the criteria for diagnosis, they decided to grab a hold of other conditions that had autistic behaviors and allow those conditions to be diagnosed with autism. And that is not true autism. A child with a genetic disorder that causes a small brain and a low IQ is not autism. That is a very different disorder, yet they may have autistic behaviors, and allowing that child to be diagnosed with autism opens up services like ABA that were only approved for autism. Children with Down syndrome also are being given the diagnosis of autism so that they could access certain services. And I have seen that also be linked to some of those increases in diagnosis. And I don't have a problem with it. I just don't like it to be used to say, like you said, that there's an epidemic. And then it's like, I just think it's so detrimental and ableist. And also, it can be harmful when you label a whole group of people as there's an epidemic. I think it's just the wrong language to use.
It absolutely is. It really is. I talk about this all the time that, my son, like, I love the quirks that he has that make him him, and the like the things that you would call autism, of his love for order of things, his love for lining things up and making sure things are a certain way, and the way he sees the world. I view it as beautiful, but I absolutely believe like it's not that we need to cure autism, and I think that kind of language is detrimental because it takes away from what really needs to happen, and that supports. So if you look at that press conference that happened with RFK, he talked a lot about blame of Tylenol, which was clarified later on that was not a adequate correlation that was displayed. And then talked about leucovorin, which we talked about earlier in this live. But what they didn't talk about was increasing supports. And in fact, they took the opposite approach. Is now with, and I don't get political. I advocate very strongly for disabilities. I never talk about politics and my political beliefs, but I advocate like crazy for people with disabilities. And the big beautiful bill that passed has been detrimental to people with disabilities. And I have seen it. I have seen it where states are now looking at cutting services for people with disabilities. And I've been trying to fight it in Utah, and it's looking promising. But other states, I know we have someone here in Idaho that Medicaid no longer funds ABA in Idaho, which is a direct result of funding cuts. Because the big beautiful bill said that there's all this Medicaid fraud, so we're not going to pay states as much, and states have to make up the difference by finding all the fraud and cut it out. Well, the states haven't been able to find that fraud, and so now they're having to look at services to cut, and it's detrimental. It's scary. I don't know how much of that you see on the doctor's side of things, but on my side of things, it's terrifying to see services for our population that we serve, that we care about, that are parts of our family being threatened. It's scary.
It is. And I absolutely, this was one of my biggest fears when we started looking at with all of the cuts to Medicaid specifically. I don't think people realize how much Medicaid holds up our pediatric communities. Things like early intervention is funded for everyone through Medicaid. Children's hospitals are available for everyone through Medicaid. And so it affects every aspect of what we do. And the first thing that's going to get dropped when you're looking at sustaining an area, it's not going to be emergency services. It's not going to be surgical services. It's not going to be, those things. It is going to be extra services, which are for our kids with disabilities. So we're already seeing it in the state I'm in Vermont, trying to figure out how to consolidate to keep rural hospitals open so that people have a place to go to have a baby. But that's not going to include access to extra services. Like we already don't have music therapy and, things that we know can be helpful, like actual ABA in the home under the age of 3 is already hard to get in my state. Yeah. And it's just getting worse and worse. Adult services, like our children need help for their whole lives, some of them. And, we were starting to see kids going to college with ABA services in college. Like it's amazing. I had a patient from my practice in Florida that went to a program at the University of Alabama and is a physicist. And this was a child with a one-on-one support in high school. And that one-on-one support went into college and is a physicist. And those programs are going to be the first to go. And it's devastating because his mind, we need someone like him. He's brilliant. And the things that he could be able to do and the life that he can lead is it's so different than it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So I feel the exact same way. And I actually work in advocacy for healthcare policy in my state and, speak at the state house and, try to work on how we get some of those things funded. And I have a tiny little state. It's easier to get things done. It's harder in bigger states, as you well know, but it's so important. So we have the exact same fears.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I went to a rally that was because they were looking at cutting ABA, putting a lot of restrictions in Utah. And I went to a rally and there was a legislator that came down and started speaking to us all. And she was talking about, we care about this and all of this. And I shouted out are you cutting ABA? And she looked at me and she promised that they would not be cutting ABA. And so I brought a bunch of people with me too to go and advocate in the legislative sessions. And I mean, if you guys are listening in and you're not paying attention to what's happening in your state, let this please be a wake-up call that right now is a time that services for people with disabilities are being looked at in every state. And you need to be looking at your legislative sessions. You need to be looking at bills that could be impacting your children, and you need to get involved. Go to these meetings, give public comment, all of this. Please get involved. All right, let's see here. Any comments you're seeing that would be good for us to talk about here?
There's been a few that I wanted to address, and that was the kind of the L-methylfolate, the MTHFR type mutation. And I just wanted to kind of quickly say I've seen it a few times, and I'm not ignoring it. It is a very confusing subject that, again, has a grain of truth, kind of like the leucovorin and cerebral folate deficiency, that has been kind of grabbed a hold of and made to be something that it's not. So there's no absolute definitive research that shows that, MTHFR mutations and L-methylfolate and all those things can actually be associated with autism or affect your child's ability to tolerate vaccinations, or they need different forms of folic acid. And there's actually some concerns that before we understand this, that when people switch over prenatally from folate to folinic acid, that we're going to see an increase in spina bifida, which is why we actually give folate during pregnancy. And that's something we know for a fact. And so we actually are a little bit concerned in medicine, like, hey, don't go there just yet. It's an interesting topic. There's more information. The consensus is not out there yet, and we don't know who needs to have this replaced and not. So that's kind of, I'm not an expert in that field, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do have concerns if parents take it upon themselves to change from folic acid during pregnancy to folinic acid, because we don't want to see an increase in spina bifida when we don't know what it does for children with autism. Beyond that, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to give misinformation.
So I think some of the confusion around this comes from us saying that that autism is largely genetic. And that statement is true and is separate from the MTHFR gene mutation, which you can test for. And from my understanding, is very, very common with everybody, not just people with autism. And in fact, there is no difference in that gene mutation, the MTHFR, in people with autism or without autism. So far, am I sounding correct? I know you're not an expert,
Yes.
Dr. Tracy, but is this sounding correct?
I was just going to say that's
Okay.
exactly, I had the MTHFR mutation.
Yeah.
And that was found because I had a blood clot in my 20s, and it's part of the blood clotting cascade. And so when you're working up why someone has a blood clot, you check for MTHFR mutations. And so 25% of the population.
No one is doubting MTHFR.
Absolutely.
Is a real
It's
thing.
25.
It can have medical
Yes.
impacts. Yeah.
It is. And 25% of the population has it. And so when you've got 25% of the population and 1 in 31 people with autism, you're going to find 2 people who have the same, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're associated. And that's what's confusing. The science there's a grain of truth to it, and it is important, but it's not the same. It's not what they're saying that it is so far. And I think it's interesting, but not necessarily something that we need to put all of our time and effort into.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like I'll touch on this in a second. I'll say this: us autism parents, we only have so many hours in a day. We burn out easily. A lot of us don't have the village that we need to have. We're managing full-time jobs. We're managing, schools and care teams, and up all night with our kids. I mean, we are burnt out. And I think one of the most toxic things in our community is the overflooding of information of things that might do 1% of improvement, but it's not even scientifically backed, but requires 100% of effort. And there's so much of that in the autism world. The diets and the supplements and the detoxing and the stem cell therapy and all of these things that have good theories but are not paid for by insurance. They're expensive and they require a lot of your time and effort. I am really cautious to ever recommend any of those because I'm really protective of you guys. I'm really protective of me and our time and really putting into things that matter most. I used this example yesterday, like stem cell therapy, which Dr. Tracy, we haven't talked about. The evidence, to my knowledge, is not there to support autism treatment, but you're looking at paying $15,000 to $20,000 to go and do that. Now imagine having an extra $20,000 that you could spend to build your dream sensory space in your garage with, trampolines and things to jump on and, playground and like imagine having that in there and how much bigger of an impact that would have over a treatment that is like, in theory could help. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't feel bad as an autism parent for not going the extra mile and trying every little thing you possibly can. What matters most is you protect your time and your effort. Anyway, I don't know. Dr. Tracy, what do you think about
No,
it?
I'm sitting here. I love it. I love everything you just said. And I think back to one of the developmental pediatricians that trained me. He was one of the just pioneers of autism in the United States. And he said that he told parents all the time when they would get the diagnosis and then they chose to go more the, alternative route. Back then it was like the hyperbaric oxygen chambers, all those
Yeah.
things. And he said how devastated he was to hear when they chose that because they'd come back in 2 years, they'd be divorced, they'd be bankrupt, and their kid is doing worse. And he goes, okay, are you ready to get started? And he said, and I did it with no judgment because I was heartbroken. He said, because I know what they're wanting. They're wanting a cure and I can't promise them anything. And I don't. I promise them support and help and ways to kind of help their kid navigate. But when someone is promising something that is going to cure or is going to be the fix or nobody can help you but me, this is the only thing that's going to work. It's such predatory behavior and it's devastating. And I think about that all the time about these parents and I've been down that road. So I get it about all the things that we spend our time and effort and money on. And we kind of then have to take a step back and say, okay, what could I have done with all of this time? And it probably things that would have been a lot more beneficial. And I probably would have had a better, retirement for my kiddo if I would have put this in the things that are covered. I mean, because once an alternative medicine has evidence behind it, it's just called evidence-based therapies. I mean, there's a reason ABA is covered. It's because it had the evidence behind it because it used to be more fringe, right? Like it's not always been just covered. Physical therapy was considered alternative medicine until it showed that there was actual evidence behind it working. And then that becomes evidence-based medicine, occupational therapy, music therapy. There's so many things that are now covered because they actually do show improvement. So completely agree with that sentiment.
Love it. Now, personal question for you. How have you managed? Like being a doctor is no joke. How have you managed this personally, having a child that needed some extra support? While also, I mean, were you done with school before she was born, or did you do that after she was born? Med school?
So I was a third-year resident in pediatrics when I had her, and I mean, it completely changed the trajectory of my life for better, as a lot of us can, attest to. But it's been extremely challenging because I, was working 80 hours a week and trying to be the kind of parent that I needed to be, and also wrestle with the fact that, we didn't even know what was going on. And, her initial diagnosis was a lethal genetic condition. So we had the extra added part that, she would not live. And she had a bone marrow failure when she was 4. There was just a lot of things, and it was extremely challenging. But it is, like so many parents on here can attest to, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I am who I am because of her. And one of the reasons I do what I'm doing, and I know you're the same, is because I feel like the perspective that I have is so important because I can go and share what it's like. And understand parents that I would not have understood before. I did not have this understanding before. And I think you have to go through this in some ways in order to really get it. So, best experience of my life, but definitely the most challenging.
It's wow. That's incredible. How did you get through it though? Did you have a village? Like did you have people supporting? How like logistically speaking, how do you do med school residency and have a child with disabilities?
Yeah. Yeah. I am very lucky that I do have a village. Like all of our villages, though, they can be great and also hard too, right?
Yeah.
But I certainly, we moved back home after I finished residency so we could get some extra support. And I worked jobs that were nights and weekends so that I could be home more with her. And my husband and I traded off so that one of us was working and one of us was at home. And so we never saw each other and we never slept. And, we definitely hurt our own health because of that. But I think that you create a world around you of people who get it, and that shifts over time. And I think that is really important. But we had some amazing therapists back home in Florida and actually one of them was our ABA therapist. And, she changed our life. She really helped us understand our kid and our role in how things were going. And it was absolutely life-saving. And she's still, a very close friend to this day. So I feel like sometimes my daughter's educators and therapists became that circle for us when maybe our family didn't fully understand.
Yeah. Wow. I hope Dr. Tracy, as you shared all of that, I hope the amount of inspiration that you have given to all the people listening. Like that is tremendous to be able to talk about that level of sacrifice that you and your husband went through to raise your daughter, as well as pursue your own goals and your own profession. I mean, it's incredible, and I think a lot of people aspire to be able to manage the household and manage this life that can be so challenging with having a child with disabilities. And you're a really good example of that. So I appreciate you being open and sharing some of that.
Sure. The last thing I'll say to that is I don't want to paint it that I always did a good job. I didn't. She's 20 and I go back and I think all the time of things that I wish that I could do differently. And I never want to paint it as like how great of a job we did and how, we all do the best we can. We wake up every day and we put one foot in front of the other and think, okay, how am I going to, maybe I'm going to take care of myself today. Maybe I'm going to be a great parent today. Maybe I'm going to be a great doctor. Maybe I'm going to be a great spouse, but it's not going to be good every single day. And that's not humanly possible. And I've had times where we did every therapy and I've had times where we did nothing because that was really all we could handle. And so I never, ever want for people to think that it was easy. I am privileged. There is a difference.
Yeah. Well,
So.
I think both those things are true. And also that you were selective of, what you put your time and effort into. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to do this and also like do all these, lifestyle changes of diets and supplements and, non-evidence-based treatments that you're putting your resources and time into. Like you had to be very selective into, what inputs you're giving your family. So I don't know. It's a good example. I enjoy hearing this.
Well,
right.
I have to step off, but this
Yes,
has been
thank
so
you.
much fun. Thank
Dr.
you for
Tracy,
having me.
everyone, please follow Dr. Tracy if you're not already. She's amazing. She goes live herself quite often. If she ever requests to come up, I will bring her up gladly every time because she has so much information. So thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you for
Tracy.
all you do.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye. Take care.
See ya. All right, everybody. This was so fun. Oh my gosh. And we're just getting started. We are not done yet. We are not done. She left, but we are not done. She is so good. I would love to make sure everyone has a pediatrician just like her who has personal experience with these things. So but let's keep this conversation going. We're not just talking pediatrics, all things autism. Something I like to do is put in the chat, put a 1 in the chat if you have a child with autism, put 2 in the chat if you have autism, and put a 3 in the chat if you're just here to listen and you're not connected to autism. 1, 2, or 3. 1 is a child with autism. 2 is you have autism. 3 is you're just here to learn about autism. No connection to autism. Okay. Yes. I see a lot of 1s, a lot of 2s, a couple of 3s. This is so good. You're in the right place. Everybody, all of you, if you put 1, 2, or 3, you are in the right place. Please make sure you're following me. I go live every day for a couple hours. I have seen several comments of people thinking that I'm AI. Why? Why is that a thing? You think if I created an AI, I would have made him a lot more handsome if I made myself AI. I think what it is I have a couple lights here, and so I have light coming from 2 angles, and so I think the light kind of looks weird. Jesse, because I'm so perfect. I'm just too professional. That's funny. I love it. Yeah, AI is getting tricky. Definitely not AI, you guys. I'm a real person. But y'all are going to get me banned. Everyone's going to think TikTok algorithm is going to punish me thinking I'm AI or something. Oh, thank you, Bad, for pinning that. That is important for sure. Oh, Cameron, thank you. Cameron, are you back in town? Good to see you on here. All right. Notification says, what age autistic kids usually start to speak? That's hard to say. Especially, there's a few things here. One is everyone is so different. Every child with autism is so different. Okay. However, not even that, but it's not like your kid doesn't speak and then one day they're fully communicating. And so it's hard to say, like, whenever someone says my kid started talking at age 4 or age 5, I don't quite know what that means. Does that mean that's when they said their first word? Or is that when you, a lot of times people refer to verbal, that they're verbal now, that they can talk as they can have conversations. And so my son has been able to say words. His first word came at around age 2. But he has been learning words and improving communication consistently since then. And so I don't know where I'd put him there. But everyone's so different. And some kids with autism and some people with autism, they struggle their entire life to communicate well. And they may use a device to be able to do so. So everyone is so different. Yeah. All right. Some people say, what were some of the first things you noticed about your kid having autism? Put it in the chat. I know I do this often as well, but I think it's a good thing that it just gets people aware. There were a lot of people who said 3, that they're here to learn about autism. Maybe they're wondering if their child has autism. What did you notice first with your child? Let me explain a little bit what I saw. Some of the most common things that you'll see if a child has autism is they don't respond to their name. They're slow to learn to communicate. They don't make eye contact. They don't look where you're trying to point and show them something. They don't point themselves. They stim, which refers to repetitive stereotypy, where you're hand flapping, twirling. My son likes to hold pencils or like toothbrushes and spin them. And so, yeah, a lot of people, thank you all for sharing your thoughts. It really does help people. We get new people in here every day who they're just trying to learn about their kid. They're trying to support their kid. Jesse says, my first child and I kind of missed some signs. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And you're not wrong. I mean, I was in denial. When I had a kid with autism, when he was early on, I was a little bit in denial, and that's okay. It sometimes takes us a minute to get around, but the quicker you do, the quicker you can start finding supports. Yeah. Getting an autism diagnosis doesn't change who your child is. Okay? Your child does not change who they are because they have an autism diagnosis. It simply opens the door to more services that they can have. Angelica says lining up our shoes and toys, no functional language. Oh, the lining things up. Put yes in the chat if your autistic kid lines things up. That's one of my favorite autistic traits that a lot of kids with autism show. Put yes in the chat if your child lines things up. This is my favorite thing. I love it so much. And what I love about it is the autistic brain's need for order. I mean, it's not just like lining things up is them trying to make sense of their world. Did you guys see this TikTok video? There was a TikTok video that I saw of a parent telling their autistic child to go clean the toy room. And they walked in after a couple hours of work, and every toy is spread out evenly across the floor of the playroom. I mean, there was not a 6-inch space in the entire floor where there was not a toy, because they put all the toys in the same direction and they evenly spaced them out everywhere. And to them, that was, I cleaned the room, I organized the room. I need to find that and repost it. So cute. Oh, Jesse says the way the therapist explained it to me is no playing with toys for their intended use. That is a common sign of autism, is using toys more for sensory and not like doing imaginative play or using the toy how it's designed to be used. Yeah, that's a good point. Keep on putting those questions up. I'm gonna bring some more people in. If you're in the guest box, I'm gonna bring some people up. Amy, I'll bring you up for sure. If you guys have questions, go ahead and be requesting up, and I'll let some people in. Or you can put your question in the chat, and we can bring you up. We're going to talk to some more people. Amy, how are you doing today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. How did you feel like that went, having Dr. Tracy up here?
I think that was really informative. I think it was great for people to be able to hear things from a medical professional. I know a lot of people are hesitant, and that's a little bit of why I wanted to jump up too, is I saw a lot of questions directed towards her about genetics and has anyone in the chat done genetic testing. And I think it's really important that we have the discussion of what the difference between hereditary and genetic is. Autism is a genetic mutation. That's what it is. That's what it comes from. That's how it's caused. That does not mean that it has to be hereditary. Not everything that's genetic is inherently hereditary. That means that it comes from the parents. So if both you and your partner who created your child are not autistic and do not have autism and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that somewhere in your genetic makeup there wasn't something that caused that autism to skip generations and to be with your child now.
Yeah.
It's a big difference, and I see a lot of people confusing those two.
Yep, I agree. Hereditary is not the same as genetic. There can be hereditary aspects, but it doesn't have to be. And there's a lot of ways that we know that it's genetic. I shared a video on this yesterday, but one of the main ways we know that it's genetic is through twin studies, where identical twins who share 100% DNA almost always both have autism. And fraternal twins who do not share 100% DNA, it's really a case by case. There's not that strong correlation, and so it's pretty strong evidence. It's also considered polygenic, so there's no autism gene. And when we say genetic, we're not talking about the MTHFR genetic mutation. That has been shown. There has been no shown or studies showing a correlation between MTHFR and autism. The rates of MTHFR genetic mutation are the same within autism and outside of autism. And so autism is simply the way the brain was developed in utero. You don't catch it. You don't get it when you're born or after you're born. You don't get it from someone else. You don't get it from toxins. It is simply genetic, with environmental conditions being able to impact how genetics play out. So, Amy, thank you for sharing that. Feel free to hang out up here. We're going to see if we can bring some more people in who have more questions. Let's see here. All right, you guys. Keep the questions coming. We'll bring some people up. I can't talk now, but is it normal for certain foods to trigger behavior issues? All right, here's something I like to share about food. Food does not cause autism. Food toxins do not cause autism. However, nutrition absolutely can play a role in how people act, in how people behave, in how people feel. One of the things we see, like if you have a kid who communicates well, who's neurotypical, you can tell, like when they're sick, it impacts their behavior. Now imagine if they were not able to express what they were feeling. And so a lot of our kids with autism, even the little things, tummy aches, toothaches, things like that can really impact their behavior. And a lot of that has to do with their ability to communicate as well. But there's nothing about autism that makes it so that there's food sensitivities or something like that. Ange says dyes and sugars affect some kids, not all. Absolutely, whether they have autism or not. That's a really good point.
That question, Sabi, I don't know how to say your name. I apologize.
Amy, you're cutting out a bit.
Back to that. Oh, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you better now. Yep.
Okay. That goes back to that genetic aspect that we're talking about. You can have multiple kids. Having one kid diagnosed with autism does not inherently mean that your second kid is going to have autism, nor your third or your fourth or your fifth. It is simply a genetic makeup thing, and it will happen when it happens, and it won't happen when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's not going to guarantee it. However, there are some interesting studies that if you have one child with autism, the likelihood of having another child with autism is higher. And so there are some correlational things like that. It's not a guarantee, and they're still most likely not going to have autism. But the risk is higher if you already have a child with autism. And so,
and that's so strange, because the genetic doctors that I was talking to at the Children's Hospital, they had explicitly explained to me that just because my current daughter has autism, does not put my second child or any future children at any greater risk of coming out with autism than she had. It was a 50-50 chance for her, and it was a 50-50 chance for every other child that I had. So I'm not sure, who gets what information from where or what is, widely
there's
circulated.
Definite
But I know
of showing that correlation, but to be able to tell someone that they have more likely or less likely, you can't really do that. It's just a correlational thing that if you have one child with autism, there is a correlation of increased, but it's still more likely that you won't have a child with autism than you will. Let's see here. Is it from the dad gene? There are, I think it's something like 500 genes that are identified that are correlated with autism. I have 4 kids. 3 of them have autism. I also have autism. Yeah, Sarah, I love autism families. There's a lot of good ones out there. I know a family that have 7 kids, 6 of which diagnosed with autism. Alicia says, not sure is age contributed to it either. Okay, here's some research. Here's some interesting research. So we know it's genetic, but there are environmental factors that can bring out the genetics. And that's the environmental factors are all happening in utero, or like at birth. And so some of those factors are advanced parental age. That is one of those environmental factors that is increases the risk of having a child with autism. Now, there still needs to be that genetic predisposition. The genetics are the blueprint, and the environmental factors are impacts how those blueprints play out. All right, guys, what other questions do you have? Maybe I'll see if there's people in the guest box that we can bring up. Oh, I didn't see Lexi had requested. Hello, Lexi. Good to see you. Okay. How are you doing?
Hi, good morning.
It's good to see you.
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good as well.
That's good.
All right.
I thought having the doctor on there was really cool. There was a lot of interesting things that she brought up, and I was really listening, and it was amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Of course, of course. Yeah, she's really great. Hopefully she got a lot of followers, a lot more from coming up, and that was great. We have another guest request in here that I'm gonna go ahead and see if Reckless has a question for us. Reckless, are you still there? Hello.
Yes, I am. How are you?
Well, I'm doing
I
great.
was
Thanks
an
for your
art.
patience.
Yeah, no worries. I was an art therapist for 25 years. Did low functioning, high functioning autistic kids. Loved my career. And the problem that I had was a lot of the IEP meetings were really, really hard because, trying to get these kids to thrive, knowing that, parents aren't going to be around forever, and getting them the help that they need. So as they become an adult and they get the supportive services, a lot of the problem that I think that lacks is that there's not enough training in the paraprofessionals or in the teaching. And I think that it should be a yearly thing. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I think because, the one
Training
school
of
that I went
paras.
to, the training for the teachers to understand what autism is, because one of the students that I had, and I'm going to share this story, that in one of the elementary schools that I went to, it was very abusive, and we had to report the teacher. No training whatsoever on special education of, autism and what is that other one? Not Lesch-Nyhan syndrome, but Fragile X.
Mm-hmm.
And, we started finding things out with, marks on these kids and stuff. And it's happened a couple of times, but, I think if you're going to get into that special education field, especially with autistic kids, because you don't know from one minute to the next. They could be in a mood that's great, and then the next minute, something just so tiny can throw them off, and it's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And, you have to be ready.
You're bringing up a good point, and you're bringing it up in the perspective of schools, because that's where your mind is and where a lot of your experience is. And I want to emphasize it's not just schools, but like part of the question of would you cure your child's autism, my answer is always no. And part of what I would want to cure is the world and the environment and how conducive and ready it is to accept people with autism and disabilities. And that includes school, but it also includes like police officers. It
Yes.
includes inclusive playgrounds. It includes how just people in general in the community react to people with disabilities. I mean, it applies everywhere and not just school. So I agree with you. I would love to see more training and something that, so my company in Utah, we have done police training before to support local police departments in how to work with people with disabilities and autism, and that's gone really well. But I'm not too well informed on training requirements for teachers. But if there is not already a requirement to annually be trained on people with disabilities and IEPs and laws and how to work with people with autism, I agree with you completely. There should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Because there
know
just
they need
isn't
to
enough.
do like
Can I
continuing education,
interject
right?
here for just 1 second?
Please, Lexi.
I actually was a preschool teacher before I had to leave my job because it was too much to deal with that. And also, my own child and 17 other children. And I also worked with children who had autism. And the training is not there. And that's where
Lexi, you cut out there for the last thing that you said. Are you back with us? Can you hear
who
us?
have autism. Sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. We lost you for maybe 5 seconds.
Oh. That I was saying that's where my heart kind of hurt. I knew about autism because I have a child with autism, but all of the other teachers that worked in the other classroom had no idea of the difference between a typically developing child and a child with autism. And that makes it really hard on the teaching staff. And then it also makes it hard on the child. So I think that training, professional training should be given, because the only thing that they would tell us is children who have autism may have sensory issues, and you just kind of need to give them a corner where they can like process their sensory needs. They don't tell you what sensory needs. They don't tell you that not all children have the same sensory needs.
Right.
They don't tell you
Yep.
they don't tell you that some are sensitive to loud noises. They don't tell you that others have like sensitivities in their mouths,
Mm-hmm.
or need a fidget toy, or they don't tell you all of that. They just tell you they have sensory needs. You need to put them in a corner where they can process their feelings. And it's like, wait, what? So I feel you on what you're saying, and I think it's really a valid thing, and something that needs to get pushed out there. That if you're going to have teachers who are going to be in a classroom and who are going to have children that have special needs, there needs to be some sort of like training. I know they're not RBTs, but do something like an RBT training for the teaching staff so that they know how to address the behaviors in a positive way, not in a negative way.
Right, because some of the kids that I worked with were in that, I don't want to call it I don't want to call it a violent category. I called it more of like very high emotions, because I've been bit, I've been hit, I've been spit at, I went through this shit for 25 years.
Yeah.
And you have to take it in a direction that it is not their fault, that they need space between you and them, and you have to approach it in a completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and one of the kids that had autism actually kicked me in my face and busted my lip open while I was at work, because he was having a behavior. And I mean, I get it, because my son has behaviors too, and I knew what to do. It just so happened that I was protecting another child when he kicked me in my face, and busted my lip open. So there needs to be more training on that, though, because before that, I dealt with my kids, so I couldn't know what to do. But the other teaching staff was just like looking around, like, what do I do? What do I do? Because there is no training.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. I know that the teachers can get blamed a lot for it, and I know that teacher burnout is real, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff, but it also has to do not with the teaching staff, but the way that our system is made, where they don't give you that training.
Yeah. Lexi, thank you for sharing that. Reckless, this was a great conversation, a great discussion, and thank you for doing art therapy and supporting kids. And I mean, you had, it sounds like an intense but a very beneficial and impactful career.
Yeah, and I miss it. I would love to go back into it, but
do you have any last minute thoughts that you would like to share with people before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, just keep advocating, just keep pushing, and don't stop just because, an educator says something. This is your child. You know your child better than anyone else. And so keep doing all of the things.
That's so
Thank
powerful.
you for having me on.
Reckless, thank you for being here, and that insight is perfect. You do know your child better than others. And how I talk about it often is that, like, yes, you're going to coordinate a care team. You're going to have you're going to have professionals that work with your child that knows the science and knows that treatment, knows that therapy better than you do. However, none of these people know your child as well as you know them. So, Reckless, thank you for that discussion. Everybody, if you have questions, put it in the chat. I also changed the format here so you can be requesting up. If you request up, it's because you have a question. We try to keep these questions pretty brief. We try to keep this live moving. If you have questions, go ahead, throw it in the chat, and we can keep talking. If you want it asked there, if you want to come up, you can request in the guest box. Amy, I love that. Yep, get an advocate if you're worried. What is the best thing to ask for on your child's first IEP? Oh, that's a good question. Amy, Lexi, do either of you guys have thoughts on that? What things to ask for on an IEP?
Yeah, I mean, I just went through this. So my daughter is 4, so we are starting her school journey, and I have already had to have my first IEP drawn up, because you are required to have one drawn up prior to them joining the school district and starting school with them. A lot of what you want to do is a lot of it is advocating. I'm going to be real. A lot of it is advocating for your child. So think about the things that you know your child struggles with the most. Can they sit down? Can they attend one task for more than 10 minutes? Can they attend a task for more than 30 minutes? Are they capable of responding to their name? Do they elope? All of these things are going to play into their school journey and how they are going to be responded to in a public school setting. Now, for us specifically here, I because of my daughter's limitations, I am very hesitant about just sticking her in public school. I think it would be a disservice to her. It would be a disservice to the teachers. However, what I will say is that I found an ABA center that is very close to along the lines of what Kylan's services provide, except for it is also a classroom readiness program, and you can look those up on your on Google. You can see if they reside in your state. What this does is it essentially offers her full days of ABA therapy, so she's there from 9:30 to 3:30, which mimics a traditional school day. It is also preschool focused, so she is learning things that other preschool children would learn. However, it is also geared towards creating a safe space for these kids to be able to work slowly towards functioning in a public school setting. So like they have her sitting for
Hey, Amy, your audio has cut out almost completely. It's very muffled. I don't know if you're away from your phone or if it's just the service.
any better right there.
Oh, now I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
You're fine.
Yeah, so basically they have her doing things that an average preschool would have their students doing. Sitting in circle time, reading books, learning facts about things. She is doing a traditional preschool class right now. However, it is tailored to fit her needs. And she's in there. The only other children that are allowed in there are neurodivergent kids. So a lot of that is the thing you want to look into. Can you prepare your child better for this? And then at the end of her classroom readiness program, what they will do is they will assess her again, and they will decide if it is possible for her to exist in a public school setting, if it's going to be a distraction, if it's not going to work for her, all of those things.
Yeah. Amy, I love that. And I'll just, as far as the IEP stuff goes, I'll touch on, it's hard to say, make sure you ask for this in every situation, because the whole purpose of an IEP is to be individualized. The big thing that I'm going to recommend that you do is research what rights you have, understand that your goal and the school's goal should be the same thing, but you have competing contingencies at play. The school has a budget that they need to meet. Your child has needs that may need a higher budgeted support level. And so sometimes parents feel like they have to almost fight for that increased level of support. And so I think if we also knew a little bit more about your child, we could give some more advice, but it really depends on the kids. Let's see. Let's go and look at some more questions here. Who here has a child that uses an AAC device? Is it easy to adapt to everyday usage? You know what, Rachel, that's a good question. Put yes in the chat, put yes in the chat if your child uses an AAC device. Put yes in the chat. Here's my thought on AAC is it is so great to use early on. It in no way slows down your child's ability to use vocal communication. It really does give a voice to your child. A lot of times,
honestly, if anything, it really helps. I noticed it helps. What I will say is that if you also have your child in ABA, you may being the key word there, have some small pushback that they want to use PECs rather than an AAC device. It's fine. You can do both of those things simultaneously, but just know that you might hear that come out of an ABA para's mouth. That's definitely something that they like to do is PECs, because it creates a situation where your child has to respond to any given stimuli, and they have to actually look at what they're doing to communicate. So a lot of them will use that primarily, but they will also work with their kid in AACs.
Yeah. Yep. Great insight there. All right. Yes. So, if you're wondering how to get it, when we say AAC device, it used to be that there would be, and there still are these, like they're only able to use communication. Now the iPads, everyone has an iPad. When people say AAC device, 99% of the time, what they're talking about is an iPad with an app like Proloquo to go that you install and use that for communication. And yeah, it's covered by most insurances, Rachel. That's a good point here. A lot of times a speech language pathologist can put in a referral for one and insurance can cover it. Legionnaire says, why does my child enjoy unlocking and running out the house while I chase? He laughs. Legion, that is a really good question, and it's a concerning behavior, right? Like anytime your child leaves the house, it's a huge concern. There's risk with that. Children with autism who elope, I mean, that is a huge danger. People, I mean, you hear news stories all the time of kids with autism who run away, who wander, and ends up not being a good thing. However, what you're sharing, a lot of times when we see with elopement, it's not like an attention thing. It's not to play. It is more of a purely I want to go explore the world or I want to get away. And what you're describing is a lot more. It sounds like your kid is seeing it as a game, and your reaction of chasing after him is reinforcing the behavior. And so I would recommend that you have your ABA therapist, your BCBA, do a functional assessment and help you have some function-based interventions to help address that. Very good question, though. Let's bring up a next guest. We got Destiny in here. Destiny was up here yesterday, I think. Destiny, how are you doing?
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Are you wanting to hang out with us today for a minute?
For a few. Since you were talking about AAC devices, this was actually brought up at my son's last therapy session. She was showing us the app on her device and everything, but she said she wanted him to continue therapy for like 6 to 9 months before she sends in that referral. Do you think that that's like an appropriate, game plan, or would it benefit him to have that now?
I think it could be. I don't know why this is the SLP that's waiting to send it in.
Yeah, she was like, he's going in a really good direction, and I kind of just want to see where he goes and give it, 6-9 months and reassess. I was like, okay, well, why'd you bring it up then?
Here's the thing: is you can disagree, and you can say it's not going to hurt your kid, and it doesn't hurt them at all to put in a referral for it. And so if it's something you want, it's like I don't think that they would fight it. Like if you
and we have TRICARE, so I feel like it's going to take us months to get one anyways, because it's such a fight with TRICARE.
If you decide you don't need it, you can just not use it at that point.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, I'd probably push back if I were you. We haven't moved forward with an AAC for my son at all. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to it, but right now his vocal communication is really starting to expand, and so he's able to express a lot of his needs in simple, basic language. So
my son tends to repeat things like yesterday. I mean, and which is great. Like that's more progress than we've seen, but since he was like 6 months old, we've been signing with him for more and all done, basic things like that. And he's just never picked it up, but we've just continued doing it. And yesterday, for the first time ever, he said, "More, please," when he wanted, I think it was more
Wow.
juice. That was the first time he had ever done it. And then this morning, he wanted a bite of something and he said, "Bite, please." And I was like, I don't know if he's saying that because that's what I'm saying, but he's never done that. And that's huge. And I feel like he's moving in the right direction, but he also gets extremely frustrated when we don't know what he wants. When he's like trying to tell us something, or he's leading us to something, or he'll just bring us into the kitchen and we have to, guess what he wants. And I feel like an AAC device might help bridge that gap in communication until he's able to do that for himself.
Oh,
if
yeah.
that makes sense.
100%. I mean, they're amazing to kind of bridge that, and it's not going to slow down your child at all. And I think, some parents are very hesitant of it because they feel like there's still the stigma around it, and you're settling instead of like focusing on vocal communication. But I think, I've heard you talk about this, Destiny, and I know you don't see it that way, and you're all for it. So I love it. Well,
I'm all for anything that's going to help. Like if they come out with a study, like right now we're doing the folinic acid, and we did the frat test on him, and we're waiting for that. And anytime they come out with something, I feel like we owe it to him to at least give it a try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it doesn't help, it doesn't help. Yeah. But we're all about, now I'm not putting him on a gluten-free diet and doing silly things like that, because I think that's not very helpful. Yeah. But, when there are studies, and I feel like there aren't enough studies. I feel like that's the problem. Some of these things
so long.
Look
so many
promising.
Barriers to being able to do the studies. And you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that look promising, and excited for the research for it. And I think you just need to make sure you're protective of your time and your resources. And as long as you're keeping that in mind and sticking to the things that are most impactful first, you're spot on with your thoughts there.
Yeah. I don't know if we got to talk I don't know if I got to hop in here. I know we talked about ABA for a little bit, and I did happen to find an in-home clinic for him that I put him on the wait list for. And so I think that'll be really good for him, because I do have a 7-month-old. I have a 7-month-old, so I cannot give Hudson the one-on-one that he absolutely needs. It's impossible. It's so hard juggling a baby who needs 24/7 care and a 2.5-year-old who needs 24/7 care. So I think that would help me, and they'll be in my house and I'll know what's happening. He'll get real one-on-one. And the wait list for the in-clinic ABA, which is the place he does speech and OT, they're sitting at like 9 months anyways.
Oh, wow.
But it is for, I don't know if there are any like military families in here, but it's called positive reinforcement. And they, I don't know if it's for military families, but I know they service on base and they take TRICARE. So that may be something for military families to look into if you're in here and struggling to find ABA for your child, especially in home, because that is what they offer. So that was great to hear.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for the update, Destiny. Feel free to hang out. I'm going to respond to some questions in the chat here. Jesse says, "My only goal for my son is communication, regardless of what it is." I love that. Anything that gives your child a voice is important. Anything that takes your child's voice away or speaks for them is a concern. And some of the, well, I won't get into that right now. That's a topic for another time. Have you been told how your child communicates language? There's a lot of I hear a lot of questions about Gestalt learners. Have you guys heard a lot about that in the chat? If you're familiar with it, say yes. If you don't know a whole lot about GLP, Gestalt language processing, say no in the chat, and I can talk a little bit about it. It's a phrase it's a term that describes how a child learns. Now, it is not a diagnosis. It does not explain why your child speaks the way that they do. It is simply a description of how your child learns language. And what it refers to is, and it's not all kids with autism, but there are many who are like this, where a typical baby might, the analogy here is, think of Legos, and a baby starts learning language one piece of Lego at a time until they finally build a Lego house, right? A Gestalt learner gets the whole house at once and then breaks it down and starts learning each individual piece. And so what you see quite often is your child can speak very well. They can say the words, but they're echoing full phrases, whether it's immediately after or later in the day. And so they start learning phrases that may or may not actually be what should be said in that circumstance, but it's connected to it, and they are processing language in a different way. A lot of times people say like that they feel like their Gestalt learner is what was the quote? Like talking about the world instead of, I don't remember the quote. I'll come better prepared next time. But I see that come up a lot in the chat, and it's a lot of, starting with the full sentence and then breaking it down. They repeat a lot of things, yeah. Anyway, any Amy, Lexi, Destiny, any other thoughts there? I think you guys have shared that. Maybe some of you guys have shared that your children kind of learn that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine does. And I've had to learn his learning style, and that's really important, especially if you're like, I go to all of my son's therapy sessions, and it took us a couple times before like the SLP caught on to his learning style. And that's important to know at home too, because he is not a kid that will sit crisscross applesauce and take apart a puzzle or put the puzzle back together. But he has this little like cupcake thing, and it's multicolored and has shapes on it. He'll take all the cupcakes out and all the frosting off of them and put them in a line. And then that's how he's going to learn. He'll line them all up, and then he'll go by color and put them back in and put them in like a certain order. And we've had to like learn how his brain works. And that's so hard because I feel like he's smarter than me. I'm like, I would have never thought to put the frosting backwards on the cupcake. I would have never thought to do that. Or I would have never thought to line them up in that color order that he does. Like if the red and the orange are together, they look similar. So they go together in the line, the blue and the teal. And their learning processes are all different, especially when it comes to speech. And sometimes you just feel like you're being outsmarted.
Yeah. Totally.
My daughter is a Gestalt learner. She started with Miss Rachel, which I think is kind of a situation that a lot of us see. Sesame Street, Miss Rachel. We had to work backwards with her. So she could say sentences that Miss Rachel would say, like open the box. But she had no idea what open was, had no idea what a box was, had no idea what was going on in the world. She just knew that she heard things happening. So her first random, consistent thing was good job, because Miss Rachel always says good job after she says everything. So the first thing that she really learned was walking around going good job about everything. And we had to work backwards. We had to start with the language that she had, and then we had to teach her what open was or what a box was or things like that. So she had an understanding of exactly what it was that she was saying.
Do you feel like you're narrating your entire day? Because I feel like I am. Yes. I'm driving myself crazy. I have to be driving. Like I'm opening the fridge. I'll go open the fridge, open door, put on shoes. Everything that we do, I narrate every single part of our day.
Yeah. And I think it's incredibly helpful for us to do that, because otherwise, how are they going to learn what these things mean? They're watching us so closely. So even when I'm getting my daughter, ready for school, okay, let's put on our shirt, arms up, arms through the shirt, pants through the leg hole or legs through the pant holes. Everything is constant repetition of what it is that we're doing. Buttoning buttons, zipping zippers, everything, is an action word. And I think she responds so well to it because she thinks it's a game. At this point, she thinks learning is a game, and I love that for her.
Yeah. I want to give a little bit of a explanation here of the difference between Gestalt language processing and apraxia. Apraxia is a little bit different. So apraxia is like when a child, and sometimes it's called like motor planning disorder, deficiency, and it is it's not an issue with the muscles. It's not an issue with intelligence or anything like that. But it is the brain having a hard time organizing the pattern of speech. I mean, it requires a lot of, the lips moving, muscles all coordinating together and working in one way, and the brain has a hard time coordinating that. And so children with apraxia, they oftentimes you see that their brain knows what they want to say, but they have a really hard time getting it out. They're capable of doing it. Their mouth works totally fine, but they have a hard time saying the words correctly. So those are separate things, but kind of related in these speech deficiencies and delays that we see. Ange says my son has apraxia. Ange, yeah, yes, okay, there we go. Yes, he focuses a lot on my mouth. Okay, what other good questions, comments are here? Let's see. Oh, wow. Yeah, someone told me that I am what did he say? Did you guys see this? Another online non-specialist coach wannabe. Woo! Wow, that's strong. Yeah, that's okay. A little bit about me. If you are new here, I'll give you guys a little bit of a rundown. I don't sell any courses or coaching or anything like that. I'm just an autism parent and try to create a safe space where we can learn together. I have a 3.5-year-old diagnosed with autism. I have worked with people with autism since 2013 as a board certified behavior analyst, and I am the CEO of a company that supports people with autism throughout Utah. I dedicate a couple hours a day to meet as a group here, to have a supportive environment. And so I'll give you another chance. I'm not going to block you yet, but if you can be supportive and kind of be a strong voice and advocate for your child or for yourself, and be a good community here, you're welcome to stay. That's what this is all about. I share my thoughts and opinions based on the evidence and the scientific evidence that I am aware of, but I welcome any differing of opinions here. You guys can disagree. You can send me articles of things that you hear me talk about that are wrong. And as science grows and as things change, I will gladly change what I talk about here. So thank you for being here. And please keep things positive. We have a Discord. It's a good place to go introduce yourself, get to know this community on a deeper level. This conversation only lasts 2 hours each day, but we all have more that we want to learn, more that we want to talk about. And if I didn't ever get to your specific question, depending on how many people are in the live, sometimes we miss things. You can join our Discord. The link is in the bio. It's just a good support group. I thank you, Amy and Lexi and Destiny, for being up here. I do have to end the live now, but I welcome everybody to make sure you're following me. I'll go live tomorrow around the same time, and you guys can, hopefully have more questions next time that we'll continue to talk about. So thank you all for being here. Amy, Lexi, Destiny, thank you guys for your discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Have a
holding
wonderful
the
day.
space.
Absolutely.
Have a nice day.
All right. We'll see you guys later.